see that my money.
Mr. Chair, this is
Yes.
Angie Barney. If I could offer our version, so to speak, we spoke to the legislation. We looked at it. It's not our legislation. We didn't propose it, but we were requested to provide input. That's what we did. So having it be proposed, whoever's proposing or offering the changes to the legislation, all we did on our behalf is to input into that the experiences from the former title holders. So we would not look at our comment as something that's competitive over collaborative and coordinated, commenting into a piece of legislation. That's how we did. So it's not either us or them. It's the committee. The council requested our input. That's what we did, and I just want to maybe not to us. It's a friendly, business friendly kind of thing that we try to give in all the sections, beginning with one on to the end. Thank you.
Chairman So, this is Melinda.
Ms. Sioko, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to apologize. Sheya, Melinda, Arviso, Siako, and Shiedo. Sitna Jenin Shlonki, Ani Bashishin, Twitchini, Dashichedo, Dashini, Dashinelle. I'm currently a legislative staff assistant for the Office of the Speaker. In a few minutes ago, I did update Speaker Damon on the HESI work session that is currently underway, and knowing that Speaker is the sponsor of legislation 221-20.
Okay, go ahead and take your 5-minute break. When you come back, we'll continue.
I lost my train of thought. Considering legislation 221-20 is due before the Navajo Committee, and I believe it was within 90 days of when it was referred back to HESI. And so considering the timeline and the history, as everyone is aware, that there was a public forum where we heard oral testimonies from former Miss Navajos, and then we also did receive, as just mentioned, the Word document of all of the recommendations and input. So there are areas in the documents. There's 2 that was received, or at least documents received within 2 different emails. And so I think the primary portion of the document that would be considered by the HESI committee is the one that starts on page 5 of the document that was sent out to the HESI committee by Miss Billy, as well as other former Miss Navajos. And this is specifically to the legislation. So the recommendation is, again, to incorporate the recommendations and input as directed by the Navajo Committee from the former Miss Navajos, and it would then be, of course, up to this committee on incorporating those recommendations. For the legislation, and so I think it's just a matter of, for one, everyone getting on the same page, the committee itself, as well as other who are on the call, to make sure that everyone is aware that this information is where it's at. Ado benachet eya belato lehigi de yaitzi ehut ainch Chairman So and Vice Chair Slater, that the recommendations were made. Everything has been completed in terms of what's been requested of the former Miss Navajos. We did hear from the program supervisor herself, Miss Carletta Benali, formerly, and she was also involved throughout the process on the forum. And then here now during this work session. And so Ade Naskal, I believe we are at the tail end of the assignment in terms of considering those incorporation recommendations. I'm looking at the document right now, the one that was recently sent. And again, it does state that it was submitted on February 10th to the HESI committee, and that it does speak directly to the legislation, which was what was requested. So I would consider this to be the changes in terms of what the Nabkeyatiket committee was requesting in spirit in terms of the formalities of the document and the plan of operations. It definitely reflects what's written in the legislation. Thank you, Chairman. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Shateja. Committee members, does that bring some clarity to what's before us? And I appreciate Miss Angela Barney-Mez and Miss Marla Billy and all the folks that comprise your group to bring this document forward. And as Ms. Siaku has stated, this does meet the assignment. We were supposed to consult the former title holders for them to have input on this proposed plan of operation.
This is Delegate Charles Newton. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I think she is. I'm glad you called in to participate in this work session. Yes, you may. You have the floor.
Thank you for allowing me to ask this question, Chair. So I know that when this legislation did come forward, there was a lot of concerns that I raised. I know the other delegates also raised their own concerns, but my concern primarily dealt with whether there was consultation. What we tend to see in leadership is the recommendation of a director, and it basically turns out to the way that they want to see a program ran or the way that they want to see changes made that would benefit, I guess, their position. What I was hoping to get out of the work session, and I want to apologize that I missed the first work session. I for some reason, I thought that it was canceled. And so when I went onto the Navajo Nation meeting website to see if the meeting was still happening, I didn't see the meeting posted. So I just assumed that it was canceled for some reason. And I apologize that I missed that first meeting. But I guess going back to when this legislation was first debated on the floor, what I was hoping is to hear the recommendations from the former title holders, because I think the statement that was made by a couple of delegates is that none of us on council we're never title holders, and we really don't know what is involved in that position. What is expected of Miss Navajo. And then there was also my argument that, the role of women has changed. It's changed so much that, we now encourage, and not that I'm saying it never happened, but, now we really encourage our girls to look up to these women. And we also tell our girls that they can do anything that they put their mind to, which is where I was trying to raise concerns about the changes that were being made by the director. And perhaps I'm wrong in the way that I had that mindset. But as a woman in leadership, what I think is that position of Miss Navajo is also in that leadership role for women, for young girls. They embody so much of the characteristics and also the traits that have been told of us through stories, through songs of the changing woman, white shell woman, and so but at the same time, again, so much of our roles have changed that I just wanted to see Miss Navajo take on that that changing role, but also make changes as far as what needs to be made. And again, I've never held the title of Miss Navajo. I never, it never once crossed my mind to run for a prestigious, position like that. But I think that I did read the recommendations that were provided, and I really value the recommendations that have been submitted to this committee, to the HES committee. And again, I think it's because I can't, say that I have the experience of holding that title, nor do I know what's going on within that office. But I think that as leaders, we all have heard the stories that were published, and then the stories that were shared about some of the issues that Ms. Navajo had encountered when they were title holders. And so I think that it's really important that we listen to those voices and that we try to assist in the way, any way that we can, which is why I was saying that the recommendations to me actually go a long way. I know that there is going to be some opposition to the recommendations that are being made, but again, the fact that individuals who have served in that capacity, individuals who have used their experience and who have said, well, if I could go back and if I could do it again and get this changed, using similar mindsets to that, I think. Again, really go a long ways for me. And I do want to thank the Miss Navajo, the former Miss Navajo title holders who are currently on the call. I really, appreciate all that you have done for our people. I did get to watch Miss Navajo competition 1 year for the first time. When I first moved back here to the Navajo Nation back in 2016, I had the opportunity to watch Miss Navajo at that time compete. And I saw, what you all had to go through during the competition. But it wasn't until last year that I actually got to hear the stories of what it means to hold that title, the people that you encounter, the issues that you run into, and then also, some things that do need to be fixed within that office. So initially, again, when I made the recommendation, or when the recommendation was made for a work session, I did vote in favor of it, hoping that we could have this discussion. But again, that was my fault. I missed that first meeting, but I'm kind of getting caught up to speed. I just want to let you know that I'm taking the recommendations to heart. I think that who better to make recommendations than the former title holders. And I just want to say I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you all putting the work into making these recommendations that council will be considering. Thank you, Hess, for leading this work session, and thank you for listening to the women who represent Navajo.
Thank you. I was on mute. Thank you, Honorable Chair Eugenia Charles Newton. In respect to the assignment, committee members, the chair doesn't go forward unless there's a motion and a second. How do you wish to proceed?
Chair Solana. Oh, sorry.
Honorable Slater, then Honorable Halona.
Thank you. I just wanted to identify from the committee who we had in the line. So it sounds like Chair So, Delegate Halona, and then Paul Begay, I see on here, Delegate Begay, Delegate Charlene So. I don't see Delegate Juanica. So, okay, we have most of the committee. My motion would be to work off of the document that was forwarded, legislation 0221-20, bill amending plan of operation - office of Miss Navajo Nation, the Word document. And then, oh yeah, it says dated 02.12.2021. And since that's the Word document, we could then make edits to it as we see fit. But we start with just the beginning. And that's Exhibit A, Plan of Operation 1 Establishment, and then work down and cross-reference with the page, let's see here, 1 of 7 in the document titled Response to HES 2-17-21. That's a PDF. And then we can call upon each of the I guess agents or presenters or people we'll be consulting with as needed, and then just move through with consent or Chair, I guess, asking for questions or clarification, or if people have objections to the language. And people, members of the committee. That's my recommendation at this time.
Thank you, Honorable Slater. Honorable Halona.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second that motion. I was leading that way we need to decide which one we're going to go with. I guess I would guess that we would move forward with what the Navajo had requested, and they were the ones who requested that former Miss Navajo Nations be included. So I would lean more towards that. That's my recommendation. But I'd second that motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Committee members, I guess we really don't need a vote. I just really needed some direction. So as Honorable Slater and Halona have recommended, Ms. Siako, could you lead us in that using the legislation as a base document, and then from there, then we look at the former Miss Navajo's recommendations, and then we take comment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the document that I am currently viewing says submitted to the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee of the Navajo Nation Council, February 10th, 2021. Legislation 0221-20, amend the plan of operations for the Office of Miss Navajo Nation. And so it starts with the establishment portion of the legislation. Chair and members of the HESI committee, in terms of reviewing the document, would you like to go line by line, paragraph by paragraph, or how do you all want to review this, Chair?
Let's go section by section.
Okay. So the first outline for the legislation talks about the establishment. And this is reading off of the original legislation. We can go ahead and view the legislation bullet point 1 under establishment. And it states that the Office of Miss Navajo Nation hereby established within the Office of the President and Vice President is the executive branch within the executive branch of the Navajo Nation. I'm sorry, my network connectivity is acting up this afternoon. In terms of the establishment, it does speak to the Office of Miss Navajo Nation is hereby established within the Office of the President and Vice President within the executive branch. And so the comments from the former title holders of Miss Navajo states that the executive branch be not included, but it instead state the office shall work with the legislative and judicial branches, other Navajo organizations and entities, and tribal enterprises. So it still has the executive branch in there. It was just worded twice. So the draft document that came from the recommendations includes the last sentence, which is the office shall work with the legislative and judicial branches, other Navajo organizations, entities, and tribal enterprises. Chair.
Chair, my recommendation is to, and this is if we still have Ledge Council on the line, if they'd agree with this wording, but keep that sentence. So it says the office shall work, but start it by saying when appropriate, comma, and then lowercase t for the office. And then I would open it up to the committee on discussion whether it should be shall or may work with the legislative and judicial branches, other Navajo organizations, entities, and tribal enterprises. Also, my recommendation is that in an establishment section that line not be included because it's about the conduct of the office. It's not about where it's placed positionally within the Navajo Nation government. So I think we could flag that and then bring it down to responsibility and authority, because that's a responsibility of the office.
Committee members, is there consensus on that recommendation?
Mr. Lona, I concur with that.
Priscilla, Honorable Alona. And thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Slater. That is a sharp pickup. Thank you.
So, Ms. Siako, can you drop that down to, let's see here, the program supervisor shall, and then we can do it as a new 8. So
Yes.
number 7 right here says initiate, conduct, and participate. Then the new 8 would be when appropriate, and then include the rest of that sentence. And then we can come down and discuss it later.
Okay. Chairman So, do you want me to continue?
Yes, on to the next one. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. The next section is section 2, which is states the mission statement. The original, the legislation 221-20 states, in keeping with the Navajo culture and tradition, the role of Miss Navajo Nation is to exemplify the essence and characters of First Woman, White Shell Woman, and Changing Woman, and to display leadership as the Goodwill Ambassador. Miss Navajo represents womanhood and fulfills the role of grandmother, mother, aunt, and sister to the Navajo people, and therefore she can speak as a leader, teacher, counselor, advisor, and friend. In March 1989, the branch chiefs of the Navajo government agreed that one of the fundamental principles of the Navajo government should be the preservation of Navajo culture. It shall be the mission of the Office of Miss Navajo Nation to encourage every Navajo to assist in that preservation of Navajo culture, and Miss Navajo Nation will represent the importance of Navajo women with respect and honor. And so that whole entire section from line 8 to 18 was stricken out in the former Miss title holder Navajo Nation's changes and recommendations as well. However, it was rewritten in a new bullet point 2, a suggested mission statement, and I'll go ahead and read off of what was incorporated as recommendation.
Ms. Siako, before you do that, I think, can I offer a couple comments, Chair?
Go ahead, Honorable Slater.
Thank you. I think to have this legislation and the plan of operations be consistent more generally with our other plans of operations, they don't really have mission statements. Those are usually determined by the programs themselves, and it's an internal matter. And they develop those, with or without external participation. So my recommendation is to continue with the deletion of the mission statement, and then advise the program to develop a mission statement incorporating what is provided by the former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. And so I don't think we need to keep the mission statement in there. And so if we move on to the purpose, that would align with how we have all of our other offices set up right now. Not that there's anything wrong with a mission statement, but that sort of definition, ties into strategic planning and, your goal statements, all of those sorts of things. And I think it'd be better that we don't hamstring the department, but instead encourage the development of a mission statement. And that's something that could change annually. I mean, maybe, that's the responsibility of Miss Navajo and the program to have a new mission statement with each reign or something like that.
Honorable Slater and members of the committee, that particular mission statement, could it be put into the purpose with proper rewording?
Chair, I'll stand by my recommendation, but welcome to the thoughts of the rest of the committee.
Yes, committee members.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is
Ms.
Angie
Angela
Barnes.
Hello?
One of the most important things about this part, we felt like the was what was between the establishment, the purpose, and the mission. We really seemed to kind of taken a lot of time talking about those three areas. And in this one, we thought that the mission should be reinstated because it was stricken in the proposed legislation. And one of the main things about it is the actual ambassadorship and the what I was just calling the enabling legislation, which is the mandate from the council through the DONET fundamental law to teach and look at the purpose of the office and the function there to reinstate it based on the mandate to teach it and to help each other with through the generations with the language and the culture aspect of upholding the net fundamental law. That's basically seemed to be one of the most important things that we thought should be stated, should be said, so that there's no confusion as to what it's to do, what the role in the office is to do. Thank you.
Angela Barnez and committee members, you know, when we listen to the individual statement from the former title holders, and many have gone on to expand their roles in teaching Navajo language. And I think that that's the purpose, not only of the plan of operation establishes the purpose of the office, but I think the plan of operation ought to also basically outline the purpose of Miss Navajo. And that's why I'm saying maybe we slide this, instead of calling it a mission statement, reword it to where it fits in as a purpose for Miss Navajo, both as a title, both as an ambassador, both as a user and a teacher of Navajo language. That's my thoughts.
Chair, since the sentence starts off the role of Miss Navajo Nation and then continues, should we put those items into the responsibilities of Miss Navajo? So I think if we scroll down, that'd be section 4, responsibility and authority. And then after the program director, it says Miss Navajo Nation shall. And so we could include that language and workshop it when we get down there. Because it's about what Miss Navajo is supposed to do. I don't want to say less about the office. I mean, the office is set up to support Miss Navajo, and therefore we should identify those responsibilities under Miss Navajo in the appropriate section. The hesitance that I have comes from, these are really big ideas, and it's difficult to have specific metrics to measure success or how they're being fulfilled. And it becomes very subjective. And that, I think, you know, if you tie it to a specific agent or actor, you know, in this instance, it'd be Miss Navajo, and then those expectations, it's easier to measure how the program is doing, as opposed to, this is the mission, and therefore, if these things aren't all being fulfilled by the program, then it's seen as a failure or what have you.
Okay, sliding it down to the responsibility, I think is a good movement. Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair. So that language will be slid down. Ms. Yoko, you got the what
Mr. Chair?
The chair and the vice. You got what the
Mr.
chair and the vice chair are talking about. Who is that?
Shanant, Mr. Chair, this is Marla Billy. Can I bring up a point?
Those are comments.
Go ahead.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm looking at the mission statement. I know that the comments made, could we just change the word role? Because it starts out the role of Miss Navajo Nation, and then maybe put like the purpose of Miss Navajo Nation and put that under purpose so that it explains the purpose of Miss Navajo and the purpose of the office of Miss Navajo under the purpose section. Yeah, Shanant,
Yes, thank you, Ms. Billy. That was my original request to the vice chair. And then he did a good response. And Vice Chair Slater.
I would ask the committee what they prefer.
Chair, Delegate Begay.
Oh, Che, go ahead.
Thank you, Che. Chair, Vice Chair Shanala, members of HESI committee, presenters, looking at the mission statement. I see إلى يا بكيت استلانسوي نش انتيده. In keeping with the Navajo culture and traditions, Miss Navajo is to exemplify the essence and characters of first woman, white shell woman, changing woman. Nakas tuigen tan yen tan tina. Wait ego eya chicken via huito art. The ko egis change do stand via ho tene santo. Nikiti yado kinasta. So sana sling. Jo eti astan. Yosko istan. Astan tle even not eya. Dan tin. Astan no yes the yahuito asiki benan tin. Tadash in the spare husband dole. It is seen the spare husband dole. The high scum the spare husband dole. It's so. Don't that or is it young the spare husband dole. Is she that in the 80? That's a son or son of the door. Yosko san atayila at nigo ibatahan. So that this Navajo Miss Navajo Nation should exemplify that teaching
So, yeah, honestly, as some people have said. So, those are just exemplifying the essence and characters of the teachings of these women. But what you see, I don't know, then go eat the Navajo, what's the Miss Navajo? I don't eat nation, beat to represent our whole people as a whole. Of course, I let go earlier. This Oya Ashland, Katibikit Astogi, did I see a Nishinan Tin? A Sunday, a sun is Chido, Arotago Hatishisha. It exemplifies the role of a woman. A mission statement had Nigo equal that this dog, but Quaggy, they do you maybe perhaps as said before, the mission statement is not the proper title for it. But I think there should be at least a paragraph in the beginning that says that specifically says what it says right here in under the mission statement, that the Miss Navajo will exemplify the essence and characters of first woman, white shell woman, and changing woman. I don't know. I don't hit ni sotas zendo. I don't ni yin that bit out. So na kin lingo Miss Navajo wali adi ya. So ina na sa Miss Heart Navajo. It don't need that. And sometimes it bothers me that the Miss Navajo competition go contemporary of a class. So, Miss Navajo Baka. Yabalakana, a certain Miss Universe that they have a contemporary selection and then a traditional where they came from what country they came from. They are Peteti, you present this thing. The Miss Navajo. Now, so, the Benanti, the next target, who one of mother be yet done until it asked about less quite. And to show all those chicken that are coming and following in the footsteps of these Miss Navajos. Now, be hot the neb, but chicken does zinky. A the benacha oho after this in the area. Good ego, Miss Navajo. Edgy. Good area, there should be at least a paragraph dedicated in a wording that says that yes, Miss Navajo is there to exemplify the essence and characters of the Nadan Lingo Sani. It says San Yosko Sana clear. Even that oh I don't Ningo Bakauda yet it on the one so yet on Suskis. Just my thought, that should say. Thank you.
Oh, should say. I guess the now that you put it in that manner, and the aspect of Quidget Askhana Niluya, plans of operation. Yeah, or mission statement, Bita Stota. Aquaki, rather than calling it a mission statement, what is a philosophy? Because it is a unique office. I mean, we don't have the aspects of running a program. She basically is the one that delivers the services of a program. So how do we best approach it? Granted, a plan of operation basically should have a content of A, B, C, D, and so on. But in the case of Miss Navajo, it's a little bit different concept and aspect.
Chair.
Oh, Cecilia, honorable leader.
Thank you. I think one of the fundamental concerns that I have with having this mission statement, again, is that it is so subjective that there are multiple interpretations of what it means to teach and exemplify the essence and characters of First Woman, White Woman, and Changing Woman, and to display leadership as the goodwill ambassador. And then Miss Navajo Nation represents the Navajo womanhood and fulfills the role of, quote, grandmother, mother, aunt, and sister to the Navajo people, and therefore can speak as a leader, teacher, counselor, advisor, and friend. Those are not static definitions. They don't. They're not the same as they've always been. That definition has changed over the history, and it can be deeply personal to each individual person, whether they are a woman or not. And my fear is that we're essentially legislating what it means to interpret the essence and characters, of its and also what it means to be a Diné woman and fulfilling these roles as grandmother, mother, aunt, and sister to the Navajo people. So that's my real hesitance in putting this in, or maintaining and then augmenting this mission statement. Because again, it's so subjective, and we need to recognize that this is a government program. This is a government office, and that's the way that it's set up right now. If we envision something different, it may be more appropriate to keep some of those subjective matters in there. But ultimately, the people, the way that those are assessed. If someone can please put their phone on mute, there's some bad background noise. Well, the host just muted me. That I can't remember how many judges there are, but those judges in essence define all of these things for the Miss Navajo that will serve a 1-year reign. And I don't think that it's great for us as a government to say, hey, these several people get to decide this for the whole Navajo Nation, for every, Navajo woman or older Navajo woman, and how people should be viewed. So, those are my thoughts and why I really have hesitance keeping this language in there. I think it's well-intentioned, but because it's so subjective, it's just really easy to make criticisms and say, oh, well, you're not doing this or you're not doing this, particularly when we try to invoke fundamental law or, what our tradition and our culture and our religion is. Thank you.
Okay. Committee members, before we take up too much time being stuck on it, let's ponder that was the pros and the cons, but let's go on to the next section. We'll come back to that particular aspect of whether or not to have the mission statement. Ms. Sioko, the next section.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the HESI committee. We'll put the statement portion on hold and go down to the next item in terms of bullet point. So that would be the purpose. This section is section 3 of the document. And so in reading the recommendations from the Office of Miss Navajo, the wording, I'm sorry, from the former Miss title holder, Miss Navajo's, the wording is as follows. The purpose of the Office of Miss Navajo Nation is to assist Miss Navajo Nation with the scheduling of her itinerary, providing support services, chaperoning Miss Navajo Nation during travel, managing the administrative matters of the office, and coordinating educational activities that include the history, tradition, and culture of the Navajo people. In addition to that, there has been wording added stating the purpose of the office is to bold, recruit qualified candidates, regular text for the Miss Navajo Nation title, and in bold letters to conduct the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant. Regular wording, Miss Navajo Nation should be actively involved if feasible to include a potential return of the agency pageants. Miss Navajo Nation is to serve as a bridge between the generations of the Diné. And that's ending the purpose section, Chairman So, of the document.
Any discussion on that, committee members?
Chair, can we ask Ms. Benali about the proposed language where it says regarding recruitment? I just wonder how the office can fulfill those duties and what sort of resources may be required of it to fulfill those duties.
Ms. Benali? Ms. Benali? Ms. Carletta Benali?
Please press *6 if you're muted.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Oh.
Okay. Again, the purpose of this, the second, what the underlining, the purpose of the office to recruit qualified candidates. That is really subjective. As far as I'm concerned, it should be our job, and it's a given that we recruit candidates, whether they're qualified or not qualified. That's determined at the pageant, and that's based on the information that they provide on the Miss Navajo Nation candidate application for the title. So for that wording right there, the qualified, I think that needs to be, it shouldn't be considered, because that's something that we do, it's something that we're already doing. We're recruiting. We're recruiting everyone that's Navajo, We're recruiting individuals that are over 18 to the age of 25. And it's really upon the individual if they want to enter the contest. I don't think we should limit individuals based on qualification for this title holder. And we do conduct we do host the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant. That's something that we do, and that's in the responsibility section of the plan of operation. And Miss Navajo Nation is actively, throughout her reign, she's actively recruiting candidates for the next pageant. So that's something that she's already doing, and that's a given. And we've always said, and that one of her platform is that bridging the generational gap from young to elderlies, just to all individuals. So this underlying section, the second purpose that's being suggested, it's something that's already given. It's something that's already in the language of the plan of operation. I don't think it needs to be included because it's throughout the plan of operation already.
Chair, in the purpose, it doesn't say to conduct the pageant right now. So I think we should keep that line in and say, or something, let's see here. The Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall conduct the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant, so that there's clarity there. If we can include that line in the purpose at the end. And then with respect to recruitment and talking about the agency pageants, I think that's just a level of detail that doesn't need to be included in the plan of operations.
Right.
Thank you. And I guess what bothers me is, for the program director to say the qualifications aren't determined until the Miss Navajo pageant is going. And it has to be predetermined before they even become a candidate. Ms. Sioko, based on Honorable Slater's recommended language change, how can we best include the aspect of conducting the pageant as well as, then eliminate the detail about the agency pageants? I think right now the way I understand it is each of the agency fair boards conduct their own agency contests. And I guess we don't want to take that responsibility on without consulting them. Is my thoughts. Ms. Sioko?
Thank you, Chairman Nez. This is Melinda. I'm looking at the original legislation document, and within the responsibility and authority section, which is on page 5 of 9, it does state assisting, it says plan, coordinate, supervise, and monitor the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant in conjunction with the Navajo Nation Fair Office and Committee. So that does speak to that section. However, in the recommendations from the former title holders of Miss Navajo, it has the same wording, except it's then printed in bold stating Navajo Nation Fair committee, and then it has a hyphen, advisory committee for former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. So I think throughout the document, coming up here within a few bullet points, there's going to be a recommendation for an advisory committee. And so I think in terms of applying the wording for the purpose in terms of recruit qualified candidates and to conduct the Miss Navajo Nation pageant was moved from that section to the purpose. And so I think in an organization, it's okay if things are repeated throughout the plan of operations, but it would have to just be the consistency of how it's worded throughout the document. So if the committee wishes to leave the wording of the recommendations in the purpose section, then that's one option, or we can go ahead and move it down to the responsibility and authority as mentioned by Ms. Benali. And then we can get to that portion as we move down the document. Chairman?
Thank you, Ms. Sioko. Committee members?
Mr. Chair, this
Yes,
is Andrew Barninez.
yes,
Just a note on why we did what we did. And again, go back to the establishment and the purpose and the mission. We kind of thought it was needed to be strengthened, and a lot of the former title holders were the ones that were asked to recruit, and that the office, it became either the title holder or the office and not both. And many of them expressed concern that they were left to their own to plan their own pageant, so to speak. And that the office was, had a separate agenda. This is why we also had the mission statement. We wanted to put that back in because it strengthens the office and the role of Miss Navajo. So this is one of those that recruitment and doing the pageant, like this year, there was nobody doing the pageant. So they extended that role for the Miss Navajo right now. So we thought that if it's not said, I mean, it's good to say that it's a given, but if it's not said and written, it's not gonna get done. And that's kind of it seemed like it was overwhelming back and forth from these title holders during our consultative sessions, that they just felt like, they were isolated. They were not actively involved. They were not informed about the goals quarter to quarter on the performance measures of what the office was doing. So that's basically, the reason why we said, or they said that this is something that needs to be written and expressed in a law document, policy document. The other part is the potential return of the agency pageants. That one is a coordinated role. It's speaking to expanding recruitment, expanding and more like an outreach to the field, to the people out there to get involved. So that was the thinking on where we wanted to put this in the purpose, and also reiterate it in the responsibility areas. So that was our input. That's why it's there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angela Barninez. Honorable Slater and members of the committee.
Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Honorable
I
Slater.
think we should put in the purpose that it's the purpose of the office to conduct the pageant, just to be clear, and then when it gets down to how that purpose is fulfilled, that's in the staffing section with the duties and responsibilities of the program manager or supervisor. But tying it back to the mission statement, those, again, it's so subjective, and it doesn't provide firm either management or other sort of directives to the office. They're just really, they're big concepts, and they're also open to interpretation. So I think the language that we should include is just a sentence at the end of purpose that says, the Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall plan and conduct the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant. But with respect to bringing in the agency pageants, I mean, again, that's not a requirement or a qualification of Miss Navajo, so I don't think it needs to be in there right now. I think this is the issue we're struggling with, and it comes back to relevance. People, we don't have the same engagement or excitement for our young women to come and serve, or maybe we do, but they don't fulfill the qualifications as they are right now. And if that's the case, these little changes in the plan of operations are not going to do that. And bringing back the agency pageants aren't going to do that. That's a tremendous, cost and financial burden as well on the Navajo Nation. So, this is a pageant, and it's individuals competing for a position. And just like, we have other government programs that are supposed to recruit qualified individuals, it comes back to defining the positions, and then people need to get in there, and it's incumbent upon individuals to apply and pursue this opportunity. But we need to listen to what Ms. Barney-Nez said about how the former title holders, when they were in office, didn't receive the support they needed to plan the pageant. And then in a program level, they weren't really apprised of quarterly performance goals or things like that. I think we can strengthen that down in the duties and responsibility section.
So noted, Honorable Slater, Ms. Sioko. Let's do as Honorable Slater said.
Okay, will do, Chair.
On to the next section.
Okay, so the next section, committee members, is the staffing and reorganization. As outlined in the original legislation, staffing and organization reads as follows. Staffing, the Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall be administered by a program supervisor. What was stricken out was director, and that's for bullet point 1 under staffing, and the recommendations from the former title holders will read as follows. The Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall be administered by a program supervisor who will provide the necessary leadership and technical expertise to fulfill the mission and purpose of the office, period. The program supervisor should also be knowledgeable on the Dene language and culture. Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, my recommendation is to keep that sentence that says the program supervisor. We could probably get rid of also, but just say should be knowledgeable. I think we usually say in a language, so I'd say be knowledgeable in the Dene language and culture. But after the semicolon where it says who will provide the necessary leadership, that's kind of redundant. I mean, that's implied in what's supposed to be conducted. And you could insert that into every single leadership position that exists in our government right now. The other thing is if we take out the mission part, we'd have to delete that within that sentence.
Okay, Chairman?
Yes, I agree with Honorable Slater.
Okay, Chairman and Vice Chair, the sentence now reads, the Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall be administered by a program supervisor hyphen. The program supervisor should be knowledgeable on the Diné language and culture. Chair.
There should be no hyphen. It should be one full sentence that ends with supervisor and then a new sentence starting with the program supervisor.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Angie Barney-Nez.
Yes,
The
go ahead.
The same sentiment plays into this underline that we suggested from the former title holders, that the leadership, we were trying to figure out, just say necessary leadership. We wanted to look at that leadership and the technical expertise in how the former title holders have experienced that they're really needed more technical expertise, needed to exercise leadership between populations and people to conduct the Miss Navajo Office and operations and so on. That was not all. What do you call it? It was missing, and we should say it. So that's why it's there. So a lot of it, you can see the concern, and that's what we were asked to do, is put in our experience in this, and that's what it speaks to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Sheila, Honorable Slater.
Yeah, I think, it comes back to what is the definition of necessary leadership and technical expertise as it relates to the mission and purpose of the office. And so when we get into the responsibilities and authorities, that's where the specific, again, responsibilities and roles of the office holders, either as the program supervisor or Miss Navajo, are put out there. But as it reads right now, if this weren't this office, we'd be saying the division director will provide the necessary leadership and technical expertise to fulfill the mission and purpose of the office. So we're just saying the office holder will do their job in the office, and I don't think it really adds anything right now. I understand the sentiment behind it, but this is, a government office. Again, if it's premised on a mission statement that may not be included, I don't think that's a good idea right now. It should be more concrete to the specific roles and responsibilities, again, which should be outlined further below in detail.
Thank you, Honorable Slater. Ms. Sioko, let's go on to the next section.
Okay, thank you, Chair So and Vice Chair Slater. Moving forward, bullet point number 2 in the original legislation reads, the program supervisor of the Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall be under the general direction and guidance of the Chief of Staff with the Office of the President and Vice President. And Chair So, there are no changes to that within the recommendations.
Chair, I think Ms. Sioko should just hone in on the sections where there's discrepancies between what's been presented by the program and what's been presented by the former title holders. Or if it's not a discrepancy, just where the former title holders would like to add in or tighten language.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Slater.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Chair.
In follow-up, I guess this part about being under the direction and guidance, would that be the first item? And then the other part that we just amended, wouldn't that be another? I guess what I'm saying is switch them around, because it does. Well, we'll see.
Chair, I like that idea. So we would pull the sentence, the program supervisor, and I think that sentence should be, the program supervisor shall be knowledgeable in the Diné language and culture, and that would be a new 3. And then we'd keep 2 as is.
Okay. And then the next item has had the Ms. Sioko, the next item.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just wanted to clarify Slater's comment. Would you like to have the bullet point number 2, the program supervisor shall be under the Chief of Staff of the Office of the President, Vice President, to be the new bullet point 1, and then the current bullet point 1 then be changed or added on to the number bullet point 3, which then would read, the program supervisor shall be knowledgeable on the Diné language and culture. And then the rest of the wording after that. Chair?
The current bullet point 1 will stand as the Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall be administered by a program supervisor, period. Number 2, the program supervisor, blah, 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 sentence ending in vice president. Also, vice president should not be hyphenated. In general, in the code, the vice president position is not hyphenated. So we should keep it consistent with that. And then there would be a new bullet point 3 that said the program supervisor shall be knowledgeable in the Diné language and culture. And then renumber the succeeding paragraphs.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So bullet point 4, which is the next recommended change to the plan of operations, the original bullet point 4, which is the bullet point 3, reads, the program supervisor shall be authorized to recommend additional professional and technical and administrative support staff as needed to carry out the organizational purposes as stated herein. Additional positions shall be acquired in accordance with the executive personnel policies and procedures and applicable budgets, rules established for conducting the annual Navajo Nation budget process. And so in this bullet point, the wording executive was taken out and only personnel policies and procedures was left in. Chair.
Mr. Chair, this is Angie Borninez. Regarding the word executive, we didn't think that there was executive personnel or legislative personnel or judicial personnel, that there was one Navajo Nation personnel policies and procedures, and that again, the concern was, you know, executive, even being under the office of the president, vice president, that the chief of staff and the program director were in, what do you call it? Not advertising, they were moving the program as to their will or as they pleased. So that's experience that they expressed in here. So we said, well, if it were the Navajo Nation personnel policies and procedures, there would be, you know, consistency as to what would be expected. from Miss Navajo herself and the office. So there's a lot of administrative manipulation that has been experienced by them. So that's generally why we, decided that executive personnel policies and procedures were not, we don't know if they exist or what they are. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So noted, Ms. Sioko.
Thank you, Chairman So. So in reference to the next section, it looks like, let's see, it looks like in the original legislation, if you look at bullet point 5, Part A, that entire Part A was stricken out from the recommendations. However, in the original legislation, it's stated in there as underlined. And so then that would be bullet point 6 in the new document. As the areas that are stricken out states, the 1-year term may be extended for 1 additional year in the event of extingent circumstances, including but not limited to natural disasters, approved public emergency by the Emergency Management Commissions. The 1-year extension must be approved by the Navajo Nation President. So that was excluded out of the recommendation document, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Sioko. Committee members? And I guess the main thing is it happened without any prior notice or knowledge of anyone within the Navajo Nation Council. And for me, I agree with just striking out that whole thing. If there's no other comment, let's continue.
Okay.
So, Chair, are we going to include it, or are we going to strike it out?
Strike it out.
So then, will we also strike out number 6?
Which
The
one
paragraph
is that?
beginning with "in the event the reigning Miss Navajo." ... About the first runner-up.
Yes. Let's see. Where is that? 666. Yes.
Chairman So, is that the bullet point 6 in the recommended document?
I'm trying to find it.
After, in the original legislation, bullet point 5, section A, if you take that out, what then goes right after that is organization. Because bullet points 3 and 4 in the original document have been stricken out as well.
Yes. Now I got it. Yes.
Okay, and then the recommended document, bullet point 3 and 4 have also been stricken out. So after taking off bullet point 6 of the recommended document, we go into organization, or I'm sorry, responsibility and authority.
Ms. Yacker, can you wait for a moment?
Yes.
Chair, I think we do need to address this issue, though. I mean, we've seen that it came up this past year, and we need to have some sort of plan in place. I think it'd be irresponsible if we don't address that. That was the major impetus, I think, for this, review of the plan of operations. I mean, do we want to say until the winner of the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant shall occupy the title of Miss Navajo Nation until a new Miss Navajo Nation is selected and crowned or something like that? Or is the preference just to stick with for 1 year? And I don't know. I'm just uncomfortable. It doesn't seem like good governance if we're going to be amending something, but we know that there is a situation that's arisen in the past and may arise in the future that will get us back into this kind of questionable situation. Because it hurts whoever holds the office, through no fault of their own.
Well, I guess the main thing is, number one, without prior notice, without consultation, it just happened. 1 year was extended. And
Mr. Chair.
And for me, that's it needed to have public notice. Miss Angela Barney,
The reason, speaking to that section that was proposed, and our recommendation was to striking it in terms of the extension, was because that virtual pageants happened all over Indian country. And right now it's February, March is a planning time for holding the pageant. And it didn't seem appropriate that just because there was no virtual pageant that occurred, that this should be put in, that 1 year is 1 year. So we concretely just stopped at that. That's basically, the reason why we, the former title holders didn't feel like it warranted an extension as such. Thank you.
This is Delegate Charles.
and it behooves the program supervisor to really make an all-out effort to stage the pageant.
But Chair, I mean, what's done is done. We can't relitigate what took place in the past. I think there's a very strong argument, and I'm probably partial to it, that what was done was illegal and inappropriate and was wrong on a lot of levels, acting totally outside the scope of a plan of operations. And yeah, it is a failure of leadership and management, particularly since this is housed in the office of the President and Vice President. But, I don't know. I mean, how do you do a sheep butchering contest virtually? I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
This is Delegate Charles Newton. Can I say something?
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So, as Vice Chair Slater, I've really been agreeing with a lot of what you've been saying. My concern with this part of the language is it's a unilateral decision that was made by someone who never was authorized to make that decision. I think that in the event, as stated by Vice Chair Slater, that something like this were to occur again, it would be probably in the best interest, to have maybe another say-so. Maybe the recommendation can be provided by the president's office, and maybe like full, authority granted by council. And the reason I say this is because it's more than just extending the responsibility. There was also the pay that was involved. And then, does that also mean that it's fair for this individual to have a second scholarship when Miss Navajo was only given the one-time scholarship? So there's like so many financial, benefits that's involved with this title that, for one person to make that, decision to extend it, as somebody else stated, I think, in my opinion, was illegal and was wrong and unethical in a lot of ways, but the decision was made. The question is, I think that what we're going to ultimately see, or what we're going to ultimately hear, is that with that are the financial benefits that get extended. So I'm in agreement that needs to be removed, but in the event that this happens again, there should be other language included that says, like, in the event that, that Miss Navajo can't be, a pageant can't be held, this is how it's going to be handled. But that's just my recommendation. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair.
In that aspect, who would be consulted? The other aspect is, what if the runner-up basically took the second term?
Chairman Daniel, so this is Carletta Benali. May I
Ms. Benali?
make a contribution here? The reason why we didn't have a virtual pageant, as everybody is insisting that we should have, was really just out of respect for our Dene people, especially with what all of us were experiencing from this COVID. At the nejo nel on a did on yet na did yet kata hastelo koje honon ne ba jo kalos njonye. It just seemed disrespectful at the time to even consider having a pageant, even a virtual pageant. Koje you yet ne bet kata hastel ba da jo ba ko koje shi pageant ba old tato. With Albanish opening Adosto, who was consulted? I submitted my request through the Navajo Nation Department of Justice. Adosto, I submitted on the actions that we can take, and to the Office of the President and Vice President's Legal Counsel. They in turn advised me to submit for legal review through Navajo Department of Justice. Adolfo, the plan of operation is vague in itself to where it's easily interpreted, And what I keep getting back is there's nothing that speaks to it that you can't do it. There's nothing that's preventing or prohibiting me from extending Eten, Bahatan, which is why I added for 1 year. The winner of the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant shall occupy the title of Miss Navajo Nation. if that's the end of the sentence. The winner of the annual year. There's so many annuals. There's that interpretation. So, there's some guidance to this. There's a rationale to this. My most important thought was keeping our Navajo Nation people safe. Virtual pageant still consists of having the contestants go through the COVID testing. It still requires quarantine the contestants. There are judges that are involved. There are the film crew that's projecting this live stream. So the contestant, they are the not just this office. You the Miss Navajo Nation pageant in Dahil Aho. Miss Navajo Nation de Tanosle. These are in that Kotem with Aho. You know, somebody make the comparison, but what that? Get the net and the Kaija, hook a with the net art and the Hokaija. The hosting a pageant involves a lot of other individuals, not just the contestants. Akosha, if one of them tested positive, they could infect other contestants too. They could infect the judges. They could infect the department staff and the film crew. If we're going to quarantine our contestants, where are we going to host them at? Where are we going to have a place for them to be quarantined individually? The pageant is really for our general public, although to select a goodwill ambassador to represent us. But the pageant itself, the whole, from the beginning to the end, all the way to the coronation, it's for our general public, our dene, iyitanedle. Highlight in Kashchen, in his other in the house, a quagan dantin, a babazen. Het been kidnapped bizarre, not abeshol, don't nasil, nas beholjish. Epe be atahanne. A crochet hat anish, do ebony na hat abit sazo. As a yugo, van sitekes o shini, koten deepayatastkiki. Though I don't think it wasn't unethical, Junlahi responsibility of the plan of operation. The office of Miss Navajo Nation shall be administered by the program supervisor. The program supervisor shall recognize AP says so. It's important to keep it in there. I just think it was just really for the safety of our people, and to recognize that we should maintain a goodwill ambassador. Thank you.
Speaking to this section that's previous title holders basically say omitted committee members.
Chair, can I ask one question?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Later.
To the program, how are the judges selected for the pageant? And who makes the selection?
The committee, the Miss Navajo Nation Pageant Committee. When this office sends out invitations to certain individuals to be a part of the Miss Navajo Nation Pageant Committee, the committee then, in their meeting, they propose names and individuals that can be selected as a judge or recommended as a judge.
So it's traditionally been the program supervisor who selects who will be on the committee, and then those people choose the pageant judges?
Yes. And invitations given, they can accept it or they decline.
Chair, I think that's the only further question or contribution I'm going to have to this process today. Thank you.
Point of clarification, Ms. Carletta Baldonali. The judges that you basically extend an invitation to, are they the former title holders?
They're not necessarily title holders. And in the past year, in the past couple of years, they have been but mostly in the butchering competition and the traditional food competition. That is from the records that I've seen so far.
Okay. All right, committee members, as this particular section is another one that I don't want to hold up the discussion on. Just like with the mission statement, this particular item will be put to the side to revisit. Ms. Fiocco, continue.
Thank you, Chairman. So let's look at really quick on the document. Okay, so with that, we're gonna skip section 6 of the recommended document of staffing and organization. That section just states the winner of the Miss Navajo Nation pageant shall occupy for 1 year, that portion. And so then we did delete the subject A line where it states that the extension for the additional year under extended circumstances.
How are you?
So then in moving on to the next section, both bullet point 3 and 4 in the recommended document as well as the original legislation have been stricken out. And so we are now on section of the organization portion. So the original legislation has an exhibit B that is shared within the document. And exhibit B is the request for review to DOJ from the program of the Office of Miss Navajo to review the document, as well as the 164 review process, which is attached in the original legislation. So in the organization portion of recommendations, just really quickly that, let's see, it states that subject 1 does state to prepare reports to the President and Vice President office, develop an annual operating budget, monitor expenditures, and provide quarterly reports, expenditures to the Office of the President and Vice President. The beginning portion of that, of this section actually says that the program supervisor shall be administering. Point 3 recommendation states manage and administer the daily activities of the Office of Navajo Nation in consultation with Miss Navajo, including but not limited to develop implementing and amending the annual strategic plan, which was a recommendation. The annual strategic plan is what was recommended wording. And then moving from there, standard procedures, manuals, handbooks, memorandum of understandings and or agreements, and developing and maintaining performance-based measures for the Office of Miss Navajo Nation, consistent with applicable Navajo laws. So that's bullet point 3, Chairman, for that section as read and according to both the recommendation and the
Thank you, Ms. Yoko. Committee members, Ms. Angela Barninez, Ms. Marla Billy. Any further comments on this?
Mr. Chair, this is Angie Barninez.
Go ahead.
Hello. The input or the consultation that happened with the former title holders, again, went back to looking at sort of like management and administration that was, I don't know, it lacked support to the title holders over the years. So in that strategic plan, we felt like that was something that really needed to be in place for the office on an annual basis. And again, one of the concerns that was brought forth, each Miss Navajo came with a platform, with a working platform, whether it was to focus on working with the elderly and the youth and different aspects of the wellness of the people. And that many times the experience was that doing office work and taking time away from the actual program plan, or we called it a strategic plan, there was really, and again, we talked about the evaluation of the office staff and Miss Navajo, is that if there were a strategic plan, you could actually tie some performance measures to them. That's the reason why we put in that strategic plan. Otherwise, we don't have, a lot of problems with what's being recommended. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Marla Billy. Can I speak?
Go ahead. I was wondering where you went.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, so just to mention on the added language of add any needed accommodations, we added that in just to, I guess, from suggestions for travel events that are really big, like the fair events across the Navajo Nation, is just to help make sure that security is a priority in the travel needs for Miss Navajo Nation. So that's just a quick overview of why we added the needed accommodations. And then for the fair, we added the advisory committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. Yes, we come back every year to help for the pageant, and we've been asked for the past 3 pageants to come back. I've helped coordinate the butchering and the traditional foods competition in 2019, and we come back to help support Miss Navajo Nation and the Office of Miss Navajo Nation. And so this is where we added advisory committee to help the office, Miss Navajo, and the pageant with, different things that they need help and support with. So that's what we added in. Thank you. That's all.
Ms. Sioko, continue. I was on mute.
Thank you, yeah, Chairman. So moving down on the items, I did incorporate the changes from the recommendations document. So again, in regards to the responsibility and authority, we are on bullet point number 4, supervise and evaluate all staff with the Office of Miss Navajo Nation, period. And then bullet point 5, assist Miss Navajo Nation with the scheduling of activities and functions which she will promote and participate, ensure that proper travel authorizations, chaperone staff, and any needed accommodations are in place prior to commencing travel. All travel and related expenses are subject to availability of funds, period. Chair?
Ms. Sioko, I think that's pretty clear. Go ahead and continue.
Bullet point number 6 states, plan, coordinate, supervise, and monitor the annual Miss Navajo Nation pageant in conjunction with the Navajo Nation Fair Office. And this is the recommended portion, and Navajo Nation Fair Committee, advisory committee for former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. Chairman.
I'll put it on here. Thank you.
Chairman, this is Melinda. I just want to mention that this is where you see the first mentioning of the advisory committee of Miss Navajo title holder.
And I guess within this plan of operation, would we have to have the establishment of the advisory committee or council and what their function would be? That would be one thought. Committee members and staff. Committee. If I don't hear anything, we'll go to the next section.
Chairman, so this is Carletta Benali. The language that is what I submitted in the original Legislative Council or the Legislative 0021-20, it does not have the advisory committee of the former as it's underlined in what was submitted, what we're working off of. I like to leave the advisory committee of the former Miss Navajo Nation title holder. I like to alleviate that or omit that and just leave it as is, that I'm going to be working with the Navajo Nation Fair to establish the locations for the pageant, and then the fair committee, because there are several meetings that take place with the fair committee. And then I like to just keep that omitted off the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benali. I guess again, the whole presentation, the spirit, as mentioned by Ms. Melinda Sioko, the direction, the assignment, quote unquote, given to the HES committee was to consult with the former Miss Navajo title holder. In this aspect, and what is presented is a function of that. So, again, this document is the consultation document. I don't hear anything from the committee. We'll go on to the next one. Ms. Sioko?
Thank you, Chairman Nez. So, I apologize. In moving on to a portion of our just so everyone and is on the same page, the recommended document from the former title holders of Ms. Navajo Word format and incorporating the committee's comments and changes into that document, and then referencing the original legislation for 221-20 as what was established from the beginning before the Navajo Etiquette Directive. So just a side note, and then after we conclude, I will go ahead and send this out to everyone and let you all know what the changes were for these. So I believe in terms of bullet point 6, the recommended wording was, again, the add-on of the advisory committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. Do we want to keep that wording in or take it out? I apologize if I didn't hear it earlier.
Ms. Sioko, again, this is what the title holders recommended. And for myself, I'd say leave it in, but the committee, if there's no reaction, then we'll proceed, leave it in, and we'll proceed forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. So moving forward, bullet point 7, the only change within this paragraph states that the last sentence reads in bold, it says ensure that the fundraising activities comply with Navajo Nation laws, policies, and regulations. And this is another recommended wording, with the administrative oversight by the advisory committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. So that's the recommended wording in bullet point 7, Chair. And so in moving on with the recommended wording for bullet point 7, it does add the committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. Just a quick statement. Moving on to bullet point B, it states that this Miss Navajo Nation shall assist and lead to preserve, perpetuate, and revitalize the Dene language and culture of the Navajo people. So that's the new bullet point 1 for section B. Chairman?
Yes, that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next bullet point is the new number 2. And this states everything that is actually in the original legislation let me just make sure of that. Okay, so then bullet point 2 states to represent the Navajo Nation as a goodwill ambassador by educating the general public on the history, tradition, and culture of the Navajo people. The purpose and intent of the goodwill ambassadorship is to enhance the reputation of the Navajo Nation and increase the number of patronages on the Navajo Nation. And the new bullet point 3, and this is where there are recommended wordings: participate in all fundraising activities for the Office of Miss Navajo Nation and other charitable organizations at the choosing of Miss Navajo Nation. And what's stricken out is to enhance the reputation of and increase the number of patronages on the Navajo Nation. So it looks like that the last part of that sentence was moved to the new number 2 and just added together. Chairman So?
Chairman So, this is Carletta Benelli. May I make a comment?
Go ahead, Ms. Spinelli.
Yes. I realize that we already passed it, and there was really nobody making any suggestions to this. Item number 7, pardon me, A7, where the language is to ensure their fundraising activity comply with the Navajo Nation laws, policies, and regulation. I would like for, because we don't have, this is a government program, and to have an administrative oversight by the advisory council comprised of the former Miss Navajo title holders, it's just going to create more barriers on what this office needs to achieve. And I would like for that language to be stricken and not be entertained or accepted or recommended by this HESI committee. So at this time, that's what I'm proposing that for A7. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment, Ms. Benelli. And I'm sure the committee will revisit that when we do finally package the report. So that would be the third item. Continue, Ms. Seal.
Thank you, Chairman So. And so in moving on, I just put side comments for the committee in terms of those comments that were just made for the wording of the advisory committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. And so in moving forward on the document, we are at bullet point 4, I believe, where it states participate in other activities authorized by the Office of the President and Vice President in accordance with the applicable Navajo Nation policies. What was stricken out was an ethic applicable laws that was stricken out. So that would be a period. And moving down to bullet point 5, relinquish, where it states relinquish the title and crown. So this is the recommended wording: relinquish the title, crown, and scholarship for any of the following reasons, if voluntarily submits a written notification to the Office of Miss Navajo Nation's program supervisor to end the title term as Miss Navajo Nation prior to the end of term year. And bullet point B, if Miss Navajo Nation seeks another royalty title during her term as Miss Navajo Nation, And if Miss Navajo Nation is proven to be in violation of the Navajo Executive Personnel Policies and Procedures or any applicable laws of the Navajo Nation, she shall be accorded grievance and a dispute hearing as applicable. Bullet point D is another recommended portion. If Miss Navajo Nation is in violation of the established Miss Navajo Nation Code of Conduct. And then the final bullet point states, in the event that Miss Navajo Nation relinquishes her title, the first runner-up to Miss Navajo Nation shall be summoned, and if qualified, shall assume the role and responsibility of Miss Navajo Nation. Chair, that concludes the bullet point 5. A, B, C, D, and E recommended changes, sir.
In this aspect, it just seems like the disqualification bullet points are out of order. And Mr. Ron Haven, perhaps in this aspect, it could be a new subsection 7. Let's see. Starting with the one that says relinquish the title, all the way to number, what I see as E, in the event that Miss Navajo Nation relinquishes her title. That part, I feel like, needs to be
Okay.
in conjunction with the candidate will be disqualified if. So, Mr. Haven, that part, I would definitely put with that other subsection that I cited. Ms. Sioko, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I changed what was previously bullet point 5 in section bullet point 5 in section 5 is now the new section 6, where it has its own title in terms of relinquish title, crown, and scholarship as the heading. And then bullet points A through E are now the new section of that bullet point. I'm sorry, section 6.
Okay, thank you. I think that fits.
Honorable Chairman, may I please?
Okay.
Honorable Chairman, may I please speak to this language? This is Carletta Benelli.
Ms. Benali.
Yes, thank you. The reason why I inserted this is because it is Miss Navajo that holds the title and the crown. So when you read it back up into B, it says Miss Navajo Nation shall relinquish. That's we're going to afford her the opportunity, if she feels the need to move on, to relinquish the title and the crown and any other benefits or royalties that she obtained in her position, her capacity as a Goodwill ambassador. It's not a qualification criteria. She already holds the crown, so it would be her relinquishing, applying those categories 1A, B, and C. Now there's additional language, D and E. The E would better suit under the supervisory authority. That would be better suitable under the responsibility and authority. It can also be better suited in the under the staffing and organization, because it's, if they relinquish the title, the position is vacated. So then this office will have the responsibility of contacting the first runner-up to assume the position and fill the position for the remainder of the fiscal, the reigning year, the affected reigning year. So it would be that section number E would be better suited in a different section. And D is actually better suited in the disqualification or the, I would just leave that out because it's already proposed in the plan of operation.
Okay, Mr. Ron Haven, we'll leave that particular aspect for your legal advice. But in the meantime, well, for me, it's the aspect. She hasn't qualified, she hasn't been selected, but we're already talking. It's kind of like the order of how the candidate would be eligible, then they would be picked, then the aspect is they relinquish or become disqualified. That's the way I see the timelines. And again, where this is inserted about relinquishing the title, then she hasn't even been selected. She hasn't even been qualified, and we're talking about it. So that's the reason I'm saying let's move it down.
Chairman So?
Oh.
Shania, this is Melinda. I just wanted to state that I did just flag that portion and referenced it as a Office of Legislative Counsel question. Does that work, or did you want to move it down?
No, that's a good suggestion, and let's proceed to the next sections.
Okay. Moving forward, the new section 7 is the eligibility criteria for Miss Navajo Nation pageant candidates, and they are as follows. Bullet point number A period states the candidates must be an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. And this is a recommended, I'm going to read the recommended portion of this section. The candidate must be an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation who speaks fluent Navajo and English, period. Number 2, a female, have always been a female and biologically born a female. Bullet point 3, able to speak fluent in the Dene and English languages. Bullet point 4, knowledgeable in history, culture, values, and traditions. Bullet point 5, 18 to 25 years of age, single, never married, no common law spouse, and never had children. Bullet point 6, a high school graduate or hold a GED certificate. Bullet point 7, have a valid state driver's license. Bullet point 8, of good moral character and have not been involved in at any time in any act of moral turpitude, defined as a quality of dishonesty. Recommended language, Chairman So.
There's no other comment. Let's keep moving.
Sure.
Honorable Slater.
Guess I'm breaking my own rules here. I said I wasn't going to participate anymore. But why is the government involved in assessing the sex of individuals or their qualifications to serve in the government? That's not to you, Chair. That's to everyone else.
Yes. Anybody?
Chairman So, this is
So? Who is that addressing the chair?
Melinda.
Yes.
Yes, I actually got kicked off there for a second. I didn't hear exactly what was just mentioned. I apologize if it was directed to me.
It was addressed to everybody. Honorable Slater, one more time.
Thank you, Chair. I said, why is the government assessing the sex of individuals as a qualification to fulfill government jobs?
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
this is Angie
Angela
Barney.
Barnett.
The language was suggested to be changed, and we didn't add anything to it on the biological born a female, that particular one. There has been some experience in prior years, recent years, that non-female people have filed for candidacy, and we didn't make a recommendation about that. Although that the matrilineal society that is being represented is one that it probably is tied to that in a cultural sense. That's my best guess, just to offer some discussion. Thank you.
Chairman So, this is Carletta Benelli. May I address the issue? Hello?
Honorable Slater, your question throws everybody off.
Honorable So, this is Carletta Benelli.
Yes, hang on. I'm talking. Honorable Slater, your question certainly throws everybody off, and it's
Chair, are you familiar with the teaching that changing woman had hermaphroditic qualities? Is any of the committee or anyone who's on the line here?
Honorable Slater, what did you say? I didn't catch it.
That's Onagla, changing woman had hermaphroditic qualities. That's a teaching that's been conveyed to me. I'm not saying that that has supremacy over anything, but it opens up how, by referencing changing woman in the mission statement, it yields these subjective justifications and qualifications about this entire process.
That aspect. For me, I thought basically astoundingly means that every 17 days she cycles. And the other aspect is what you're talking about is Nutle, that's the hermaphrodite. That's very apparent in, let's say, a sheep herd or a goat herd. Kayla Anishiyaj.
Delegate So, Shish.
Yes,
Charlotte,
go ahead.
So. Oh, yeah.
Sabizha, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, thank you for everyone being involved in this conversation. And kashin fogo bamsis keso na an piniki ada unze ni chon ni mafana ni chib ada un that the yagi you know, I don't want a lot of this to be misconstrued and lost in translation. I feel like we're kind of rerouting ourselves in that direction. And,
yes.
You know, well, pretty much discussing this, you know, I don't think we have different interpretations. There's different agencies that have different interpretations. And then that's just one I don't want to get mixed up in. And this is one discussion that, you know, we're trying to keep, it's hard to keep it simple as far as requirements. And the A question is sanadanit aniki na it's to keep that tradition alive. But for us to kind of go into depth in that terminology, I don't think we're in that capacity to do so. And, you know, I think this debate, and honestly, in my opinion, would be suitable and respectful if we were to actually hear it from our elders. Because so much of this, coming down the lines, you know, I don't mean to disrespect anyone, but some of this teachings can be misconstrued and misunderstood because there are some languages that they have spoken of, some words that we've never heard of. So we are easily to assume and make that critical assumption to where we can stand by it. But basically, and all overall, you know, I've been listening to this. My mom has been listening onto this conversation. But it's just to uphold the values. And I think all of this is just becoming very political. I just want us to be cognizant and careful where this discussion is leading, because it in so many cases, you know, this can be debated, so forth. It's just one thing I don't want us to pull into, especially in respect to all. So, thank you.
Chair, may I offer a couple comments?
Thank you. Thank you. Kehat Shapizha. Thank you for slowing us down a little bit and to be looking at the whole picture again. Certainly this legislation Honorable Slater, please let me express this. I guess the one thing that, right now, the plan of operation as written should exist within the Department of Human Resources. It was only by a memorandum by the Office of the President and Vice President that it's over at the Office of the President and Vice President. And as we're discussing this particular legislation and the recommended changes, what brings to light is the program supervisor selects the judges, I guess, for each category. Who knows? We haven't found that out. But it's one person that's supervised by the OPVP, whereas in prior years, it was managed and done by the Department of Human Resources. So in effect, this thing has really pervaded into a political sphere, whereas the idealistic aspects of holding an independent pageant that hopefully where the former holders can help but right now there's the recommendations are no, I don't need their help. I don't want their help. So that idealism is just shot out. And it's we have to understand that. And that's my view, committee members. Honorable Slater, to you. You have the floor.
Thank you. I think so. There's 2 points there. One of them was talking about the aspect that a female have always been a female and biological born a female, which is again not really well written there. But second, that teaching that I conveyed, that's not something that really comes from anyone who's informed me or brought me up or raised me. Certain things are kind of drawn from that, but it's something that's been presented to me multiple times in this conversation about the plan of operation amendment, and it has pervasiveness outside of it seems to be a somewhat pervasive idea. It's not something that I'm saying is correct or true, but that it brings up this aspect of, if we're going to invoke these things that are, how do you say this? I mean, it's basically making definitions on religious and cultural beliefs and teachings in a form of purity within that by the government. I mean, we are saying as the government that this is what this teaching is, or this is what is true about these individuals or deities. And I'm deeply uncomfortable with that. I'm deeply uncomfortable because everybody should have the ability to make their own interpretations. Nobody's saying that's correct or incorrect or anything like that. But those sorts of interpretations should be preserved and not, I guess, injured, maybe that'd be the word, injured by the government, or that we're saying that this is the one and only true interpretation of things. But as this office and this position is set up right now, it is a government position. This is a government job. And I appreciate what Delegate So was raising on us trying to slow our roll here for a moment. But we can't ignore this. I mean, this is what a lot of people of my generation are having difficulty with this position, that it's trans exclusionary and that it is making definitions on how Navajo language, culture, history needs to be lived. And in essence, it says if you do not fulfill these things, then maybe you're not Diné. Or at least you'll never be Diné in the eyes of the government. You know, these aren't the qualifications for being a member of our tribe. And I just have, under these qualifications, if we go down to the candidate will be disqualified if she is registered for or on active duty in the National Guard or other military services. She is enrolled in a post-secondary educational or trade institution, and she previously served as Miss Navajo. Okay, you know, if somebody is a student at ASU and they decide that they want to run for Miss Navajo, and they're currently enrolled, you know, can they do that, or do they have to take a leave of absence? Are they automatically disqualified? And then when former title holders don't uphold these qualifications any longer, you know, I think that raises a whole another set of or specter of questions about the continued involvement and participation and advisement in this process. I think there's a big elephant in the room, and that is that historically a program supervisor or one person in the government has had the ability to appoint and control the entire pageant. And if you talk with a lot of these former contestants, they allege misconduct in the process, year after year after year after year. That's the elephant in the room. And then on top of that, we have the transfer to a political office, which raises a whole nother set of questions, because program supervisors are at-will employees right now. If you don't do what the president or your supervisor says, you could be terminated without cause. So that's the situation we're presented with. And I'm not saying that the president has done anything wrong here and trying to enforce it or not enforce the pageant or anything like that, but it's too ripe for potential abuse. And I really think that this whole pageant and organization needs to be divorced from government. Government shouldn't be saying these things, that you can only uphold to the highest ideals if you fulfill these X, Y, and Z. You know, I think we need to be inclusive. We need to bring people in. And what does it say to our young men about fulfilling these same obligations? The perpetuation of language, culture, serving as goodwill ambassadors. Pageants aren't some traditional aspect of our culture. This is something that was adopted in the middle of this past century. And we contort all of our tradition in order to make it fit within this pageant process and within fulfilling these duties. As I explained previously, and the response is that Miss Navajo is a brand ambassador. from the former Miss Navajo title holders. You know, that this is a lot of money for a brand ambassador. And does the Navajo Nation need a brand ambassador? Would it be better, would we be more effective at perpetuating language if we gave $200,000 every year to the Department of Diné Education, or through some sort of grant process to develop curriculum, to conduct different sorts of extracurricular chapter activities? You know, that creates the sort of ecosystem and grassroots support that perpetuates culture, language, community identity. But a pageant is hierarchical and it's exclusive by definition. So I don't see how continuing a process that is hierarchical and exclusive is going to bring in the most amount of people to fulfill the purported aims and goals. And then you add in all of these other aspects about the biological sex. It references gender in one of these things, but you know, if you're talking about a female, female is a sex, it's not a gender. And it's very discomforting. It's very, very discomforting. We need to acknowledge that there's a lot of diversity on Navajo now. And we're perpetuating something that's by definition exclusionary. I know that virtually no one else on this call is probably going to agree with what I'm saying, and that's fine. But this needs to be said. It just needs to be said. Thank you.
Let's go on. He was said.
This is Delegate Charles Newton. Can I say something?
Honorable Chair Charles Newton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman So I really appreciate the sentiments that were shared by Vice Chair Slater. I think that there are certainly a lot of questions that do come to mind of, you know, how do we see our women today, and what do we expect of them? And that was, you know, originally when this legislation came to the floor, I did have a problem with the with the secondary education, I guess, disqualification statement, and then as well as the military statement. And I understand, you know, what was being said about, you know, preserving the culture, preserving the tradition, but so much, there's like a lot of contradictions in the way that this program is set up, and also the way that it is being recognized. On the one hand, an ambassador technically could be male or female, and so I think that brings into question, you know, are we really considering all of our people when we're talking about, you know, a goodwill ambassador, or are we just talking about, you know, Miss Navajo Nation, where Miss, you know, is I guess the theme as what we see with pageants, with just women. So I think there's a lot of philosophical, I guess, issues that could be brought to play. But what I do want to say is that, you know, that's the beauty of recognizing fundamental law in our code, is that a lot of our beliefs, a lot of our traditions don't align with what the government says we can or cannot do. I believe the history of fundamental law was to recognize that we are a sovereign nation. And as a sovereign nation, we get to make our own rules and our own laws. granted, there are fundings that are attached to these programs that we must abide by the federal government. But even with that said, the federal government is aware that the Navajo Nation has adopted and has put in code the fundamental laws. So technically, I think, Ms. Navajo would fall under that fundamental law argument as to how this particular program is specific to our culture and our tradition. We pass laws every single day using fundamental law arguments. Those laws, come into play. They affect our people and even our life, our liberty, our property. And so, that those have not been called into question. And so I think that that's where we technically are able to make the I guess this program, we have that say so in the way that we see this program playing out. But again, as I stated, what I would like to see is just the changing roles of women. It's very, you cannot deny that our roles have changed. You cannot say that, we are what we were at one time. We say we're matrilineal. In some cases, they say we're matriarchal. They both mean two different things. But at the end, I think it's just, we have that respect for women, but we really don't see that. And, and so those roles have changed. We still continue to talk about whether women should be in leadership. We still have those, discussions about whether a woman can be president. We have those discussions. I'm sure at one point there was also the disagreement that women should not be allowed to join the military. Yet we have women in leadership. We have women who have taken arms and who have joined the military. And I'm sure at one point there was also an argument made that women shouldn't be educated, but we have a lot of women who are educated. And that is one of the requirements, well, maybe not requirement, but that's one of the expectations that is put upon Miss Navajo, is you get an education. You get out there, you're a leader in your community, you're an ambassador of the Navajo Nation. So I think that the roles of women has changed so much, and that's really what I wanted to see in the development of this legislation. One. Two is, again, as I stated, the fact that we are a government and we are involved in this office, but I think we are covered under fundamental law, and that's not any legal advice. This is just my understanding of fundamental law and how there's a lot of programs that we technically should not be involved in, but we are, as a matter of allowing us to do so under fundamental law. So I think that, again, there's all of these philosophical questions of, how should we do this? How should we do that? But I think Miss Navajo, the office, is a tradition that has been recognized by the people for years. It is a position where women are, they're given this title to represent who we are as women. All I ask is that when that representation is being made out there, that it's a recognition of the changing roles that Navajo women have played, that have played in the past, but also that continue to make those changes for the future. So with that, thank you. I'm going back on mute.
Thank you, Ms. Charles Newton, Honorable Chair. Ms. Sioko, where was it before we digressed into the philosophical statements and for me getting on the peach box?
Chairman So, this
help
is...
us get redirected.
Okay. Sir, we were on section, newly devised section 7, eligibility criteria for Miss Navajo Nation pageant candidates. And we had read through 1 through 8. And we were, the committee was discussing bullet point number 2. And so that was where we left off.
Okay, continue.
Okay, thank you, Chairman So. So we did read through the entire section, and we did also mention the recommended language for that section. On to bullet point B. The candidates must submit. We'll be reading the proposed wording in this section. And so it'll start off with the candidates must submit the following: a 300-word essay on her proposed platform, and 3 letters of recommendation with 1 recommendation from any of the following: chapter official, spiritual leader, academic counselor, community leader, or from a professional. And the next recommended listing are the proof of candidates' suitability are as follows: a birth certificate for age and gender, a certificate of Indian blood, completed pageant application, background check, valid state driver's license, copy of high school diploma or GED, Navajo Nation voter registration. The candidate will be disqualified if she is registered for or on active duty in the National Guard or other military services, and she previously served as Miss Navajo Nation, and she had falsified any information on contestant application for the Miss Navajo Nation title, and she does not comply with Miss Navajo Nation Pageant Code of Conduct, General Guidelines, Agreement, Pageant Requirements, Rules and Regulations, which are established under administrative oversight by the Advisory Committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. And that concludes that section. And I will stop there for any comments or input. Chairman So?
Committee members. I really the birth certificate and a valid state driver's license. Is that redundant?
Chair, this is Delegate Charles Newton.
Go ahead, Honorable Chair Charles Newton.
Thank you, Chairman. So I think that your question, I think it is redundant. I think maybe 20 years ago, maybe that wasn't the case. However, with the strict requirements after 9/11, with getting IDs, and then also in the last 4 years with the push to, I guess, to cut down on immigration or immigrants, I think that the requirement right now is very stringent from the state to get a driver's license. So I think to answer your question, I do think it is redundant. The requirements are usually that you do have a valid birth certificate or live birth record. in order to get a driver's license? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Yoko, I guess the other.
Chairman, this is Marla, Billy. I just want to explain a little bit. We think we lost Angie, but can I go ahead and just explain a little bit?
Well, basically, if we go back to the previous section, a candidate must be an enrolled member. And I guess, again, that's one of the reasons I'm saying is that redundant. And then it goes farther, must be a high school graduate or hold a GED, have a valid driver's license. So those items, it just seems like it's all, we're saying it twice. Part A, candidates must be, and it goes to 1 through 8. And then B, candidates must submit. 1, 2, 3, and then A through G. We're saying it twice. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Mr. Chair, this is Angie Barney-Nez. May I comment on this also?
Miss Billy and then Miss Angela Barney-Nez.
Okay, so what we did was we listed what the candidate, when they're applying, what they would need to submit according to the previous section. We did add the birth certificate just to verify age and gender, but that won't be, not copied or anything. It's just to verify, because the previous section, the candidates have to be 18 to 25 years old, and the new added language of female and biologically born a female. So that was just added, and plus the CIB just to verify their enrolled member. The application, the background is just for like the vehicle. If you're driving like a tribal vehicle, and the driver's license too, if you're going to be becoming a tribal employee to drive a tribal vehicle, you need those things. The high school diploma is a pageant requirement for the job too. And the Navajo Nation voter registration was only to verify where the candidates are from for their chapter and for the agency, and just to verify which location I guess they'll be coming from and representing too. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add, this is Angela Barney-Nez. Add that part about the proof of candidate. We called it suitability. Suitability, not so much. Are we okay? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. Anyway, we called it suitability because these are upcoming documents. If you win, you'll be looking at these documents. There are some that are qualifying criteria going in as a candidate. But once you win, your housing is going to require a background check, I think. Their tribal vehicle is going to require that. Marla basically explained that pretty comprehensively. Voter registration, there's an impetus, so to speak, that Miss Navajo, over 18 years old, could actually go out and be an example of being registered for census rolls in New Mexico, Arizona, or Navajo Nation. So we just kind of listed those as a criteria that points to suitability once you win. So that's what they are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Sioko, please flag this for Office of Legislative Counsel. Again, just the aspect of, I guess, a candidate, if they're going to be qualified, they ought to have these documents
Okay, we'll
within
do.
their folder. Go ahead and continue.
Okay, Chairman. Thank you. This
Did
is
you, Ms. Sioko, I may have
Yes.
been muted. Flag this for OLC. You got that,
yes.
right?
Yes, I did get that, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving down on the listing, the next section covers bullet point C. The candidate will be disqualified if she is registered for or on active duty in the National Guard or other military services. She previously served as Miss Navajo Nation and she has falsified any information on contestant application for Miss Navajo Nation title. And she does not comply with Miss Navajo Nation Pageant Code of Conduct, general guidelines, agreement, pageant requirements, rules, and regulations, which are established under administrative oversight by the Advisory Committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. So that would be the rest of the section, Chairman. So.
Thank you, Ms. Sioko. Committee members?
Mr. Chair, may I add a little comment here or a clarification?
Go
this
ahead.
is Angela Barney. Okay, yes. I really didn't have, any objections about what was being offered here. Just that last line, this is the third, I think we recommended the former title holders recommended 3 areas where former title holders should be involved. One of them is pageant rules. Another one is fundraising activity that requires checks and balances of funds and so on. And then the program support is 3 areas. And we didn't know what to call it in a way because we called it administrative oversight just to show that there is some administration that is, or some oversight that is included in these kinds of activities. When you have pageant rules that cannot, you need a sounding board from people on what is to be the rules and so on. So this is one of those areas where, and they can be dissolved. I said task force. Some other people from the title holders discussion called it ad hoc. Just a committee, and it's not an approving oversight. It's a participating oversight to add and contribute to the either congruency or the clarity that's needed for a lot of these kinds of things that pertain to the young women coming in as candidates and relating to them so that, you know, they can feel that there's order and process involved in the procedures. So that's what they are. And any time that the committee, Mr. Chair, and the HESAS committee, you refer to advisory committee of former title holders, we're open to being that support group. We're open to voluntary service. We're open to just contributing to, you know, to do effective and efficient service for the office and also for Ms. Navajo herself. So that's what that is. I just wanted to clarify those three areas where these advisory committee are mentioned. It's not administrative oversight in terms of approval and putting staff on the spot or anything like that. It's nothing like that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Angela Barney. Fiocco, continue.
Chairman, so this is Carletta Benali. May I speak to this?
Go ahead.
Okay. I know this is probably redundant and repetitive, but again, it's just that we're a government function and having an administrative oversight that's comprised of the former Miss Navajo Nation's title holder is just another, I just foresee this as another barrier. What I would like to see is for this office to be allowed to invite the advisory council and work with them, and instead of saying that we're, you know, in this administrative oversight is basically language to me that they want to take over this. And if that's not the case, then I think the language needs to be removed and allow this office to function and manage and operate as a government office and inviting the council to participate and to help. So I think that's where we can do what this office can do, so that they're including and respectively the former title holders. That's what I'm contributing.
Okay, I guess the main thing is, you know, the original presentation to NABI, you were asked to reach out. And I don't know, you know, in earnest, I don't know if that occurred, but there was minimal input. But then NABI on the second presentation basically sent this item to the HES committee. And the HES committee reached out to the former Miss Navajo title holder. So in that respect, then some of it is, I take it with some hesitancy. Ms. Fiocco, flag this for more discussion with HES and OLC. You may continue.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So the next section, and we were almost at the concluding portion of the document. I believe we have about a page and a half left to go. The next section is Miss Navajo Nation shall receive the following benefits. Bullet point A reads, in the recommended document, Navajo Nation shall be paid an annual salary commensurate with acquired education skills and knowledge, and in accordance with the Office of Navajo Nation fiscal year budget and applicable executive personnel policies and procedures of the Navajo Nation. And upon successful completion of her term, Miss Navajo Nation will receive an educational scholarship of $7,500 if an undergraduate student, or $15,000 if a graduate student. The benefit shall be administered accordingly. And bullet point 1 underneath that states, this educational scholarship shall be paid directly to the educational institution, and the former Miss Navajo Nation must submit proof of registration to the selected educational institution or submit a written notice by June 30th to the program supervisor to utilize the educational scholarship for a period of 1 year, or if she elects to enroll until the following fall academic semester. And the scholarship fund shall remain available within the Office of Miss Navajo's program budget and reserve for a period of 1 year after completion of each Miss Navajo Nation term. And if there is no proof of registration or written notice submitted to the program supervisor, the benefit will be deemed a delayed benefit and utilized at the beginning of the next academic semester or the quarter following the completion of her term. And the program supervisor shall ensure that a scholarship fund is established exclusively for Miss Navajo Nation each tribal fiscal year. And that concludes the section for the benefits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Yoko. In this particular section, part of the comments submitted by Ms. Rose Graham, I guess the main thing we have to, instead of submitting to the program supervisor, it ought be to the, I can't remember the proper name of the office of Navajo Nation Scholarship and Financial Assistance.
Yes.
In the explanation that was given, that's where the actual scholarship funds are housed, and they're the ones that need to be part of the process for the awarding and the utilization of these funds.
Chairman So, if I may provide some information on the scholarship issue. Okay, currently this office does handle the scholarship funding. It's not channeled through the Office of Navajo Nation Scholarship Office. It's not handled through that. It's directly to us. And we do budget for this scholarship on an annual basis. The only issue that really was a problem or a concern, a real concern, is the accountability portion. I think I mentioned that in past years, this educational scholarship wasn't handled as an educational scholarship. It was handled in more of a severance payment, because the payments were made directly to some of the former Miss Navajos. So the language in there, the educational scholarship, if it is an educational scholarship, it should be handled like so, and the money should go directly to the educational institute, the choice of the Miss Navajo Nation that's leaving.
Mr. Chair, this is Angela. I'd like to make a comment.
Before you do, Ms. Nez, Ms. Benali.
Yes.
So it's not a scholarship. Scholarship is based on grade point average.
Right. It is
So
currently
it's
identified as
grant.
educational scholarship, but it's not been handled or dispersed as a scholarship. It's been dispersed previously. I have not dispersed any funds at this point. It's been handled previously as a more or less as a severance payment, where the payment process is submitted and it's actually channeled through the office of the controller, and the funds are released according to what documents are submitted by this office, and the checks have been issued directly to the former Miss Navajos. Now, in working with the Educational Institute, the requirement is usually that the former Miss Navajo would identify the institute that the money needs to go to their office, so that it's actually used for the intended purpose as a scholarship. So that is the reason why I put it in the language of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Really just to simplify it, but to ensure there's accountability on our part, and that we do fulfill the benefit that is actually won by the Miss Navajo Nation.
Mr. Chair, this is Marla Billy. Can I make a comment?
Miss Angela Bardinez first, and then to Miss Marla Billy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Angela. I just wanted to add here that we did pass this back and forth for a while, or whether there should be over to the higher education office, and we did talk about how the Office of Miss Navajo needs to reach out and establish that particular scholarship fund and make it recognizable and available, all those good things. And then we kind of just went to the recommended language, meaning that it's going to be paid to the educational institution, and recommended some timelines, and that the collective recommendation at that point was to just have the office identify that fund. But I also am in agreement with your notion that you read from the higher ed office's director as the one to keep or to secure that fund. Our idea from the former title holders discussion was to have something very similar to an award as Miss Navajo wins the crown and the title. And in doing so, she is winning a scholarship. And in that scenario of scholarship, we thought that it could be very similar to something that AmeriCorps does. AmeriCorps records a whole number of hours that you give to community service and whatever projects that they have. Once you complete satisfactorily, they give you a number identifying the scholarship that you won. And that is up to you to keep the number and to keep in the timeline. I believe that they give like maybe 5 to 10 years to use that financial assistance fund. And that's kind of what we thought when we were looking at the scholarship portion of this Miss Navajo title. That if, there was this notion of relinquishing that title if you don't, jump all the hoops and get there with the timeline. And some of the former title holders also had issues with school starting on September 1 or in August 1, and they submitted for scholarship and were told that you have not completed your reign yet because Navajo Nation Fair is still a week or 2 days, 10 days away. And they were not able to get into the timeline for getting that scholarship. So they ended up getting their papers and documents organized until the next following semester. By that time, some of them were told they were not qualified to get it because of various different kinds of paperwork reasons. So we did talk about the scholarship committee from the higher education office, which seems to be most, it's very highly organized and done well, as opposed to the Navajo Nation office, Miss Navajo Nation office, not actually holding the scholarship fund securely. It was not secured there. And it was it became subject, what do you call it, to subject. And that you could get it or you couldn't. That was a whole lot of portion of our discussion or their discussion. I'm just being like the mouthpiece for what I've heard from these title holders. All I did in 1975 was put in there, my recommendation that whoever wins Miss Navajo should have a scholarship. And then over the years, it went into an actual, mechanism to get help to continue. So in the end, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, and I appreciate what Carletta has been adding here and all the discussion. What we said is the scholarship is a given. It should be given to Miss Navajo when she completes her year. Whether it's to the institution, whoever it is, but like AmeriCorps, give her that time that she needs to get back to school. Another thing we said is that when Miss Navajo is selected, she needs to know that she is going to continue her education, whether she already has a baccalaureate degree or she has a high school GED or so, that her education is going to continue. And I think some of you remember our president from the Miss Navajo Council, Sarah Johnson Luther, said the idea from the Miss Navajo Council organization is to empower our girls and to empower Navajo women. And when they finish, if they're not fluent in their language, if they're not, they need certain kinds of skills, education. This is something that we would like them to engage in after they're done and then become an instrumental leader for the Navajo people. So, those are kinds of things that we put in here so that the scholarship portion of what you got, not just the roses and the flowers and so on, that you do have a prescribed future expected from you as you go in and as you exit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Committee members, Ms. Sioko, flag this one so that, again, one, to divest some of the work of the office of Miss Navajo to the appropriate entity, quote unquote, the scholarship office. They'll administer the Miss Navajo scholarship or grant. It is a grant. Also, we'll ask Office of Legislative Counsel to develop the appropriate language to facilitate that.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is Melinda.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay, I did flag that portion. I flagged that entire section for OLC as well as HESI final revision review. So within that, we'll go ahead and conclude this section. We are on bullet point C. And then bullet point D, and then we'll go back to questions. So here is the recommended language for bullet point C. The Office of Miss Navajo Nation will be provided a tribal vehicle for Miss Navajo Nation. The assigned government tribal vehicle shall be used to carry out Miss Navajo Nation's itinerary and shall abide by the Navajo Nation Motor Vehicle Use Handbook. If no tribally assigned vehicle is provided, Miss Navajo Nation shall travel in a safe and insured privately owned vehicle, POV. Bullet point D, Miss Navajo Nation shall be furnished tribal housing at Window Rock, Navajo Nation, Arizona. The Office of Miss Navajo Nation shall budget for the pre-assigned tribal housing, including the costs of water, sewer, refuse disposal, electricity, natural gas, unless such costs and expenses are otherwise provided for in the Navajo Nation budget. Miss Navajo Nation shall be responsible for the housing security deposit. Miss Navajo Nation shall adhere to the Navajo Nation employee housing rules and regulations. If Miss Navajo Nation declines to reside in a pre-assigned tribal housing, the Navajo Nation shall not be responsible for liable costs and expenses incurred by her residing elsewhere. That is the end of the section. Chairman So.
Thank you. Go ahead and finish the document.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The next section is outlined stating legislative oversight, and the recommended language goes, the Nabik-Eyatikit Committee of the Navajo Nation Council shall be the oversight committee of the Office of Miss Navajo Nation. The next section, which is the last section, is amendments. It states the plan of operations of the Office of Miss Navajo Nation may be amended by the Nabik-Eyatikit Committee of the Navajo Nation Council as recommended by the Office of Miss Navajo Nation with a consultation with the Advisory Committee of former Miss Navajo Nation title holders. That concludes the document, Chairman So.
Thank you, Ms. Sioko. Thank you for facilitating the discussion. As noted, I think there's 5 issues that we really need to discuss more. And some of those are items that we've referred to the Office of Legislative Counsel. Then the other aspects of whether there will be a mission statement, whether there will be other aspects relative to the Office of Miss Navajo. And so in that aspect, the work on the plan of operation is still a work in progress. Committee members, at some point in time, the committee will have to then sit with OLC to walk through the items that have been flagged. And we appreciate Ms. Melinda Sioko to help us with that. Miss Beverly Martinez and to the former Miss Navajo title holders, Miss Angela Barney-Nez and Miss Marla Billy. Thank you, and then be sure and convey or thank you to the former Miss Navajo title holders, starting with the oldest one that was on our call, Miss Navajo of 1966, Sarah Johnson Luther, and all the way to former Miss Navajo of 2019, Autumn Montoya. So thank you. We appreciate the many discussions that you've, I'm sure, held. We appreciate what you presented to us. And to Ms. Benali, thank you for engaging. And committee members, Miss Martinez, in regard to this, our work will continue. At some point in time, we'll schedule another work session based on when the Office of Legislative Counsel has some recommended language and some recommended advice on where certain actions need to be further defined. Ms. Martinez, what should the committee do to now? Do we need to just adjourn? Ms. Martinez. Hello, could you hear me?
Chairman, so this is Carletta. I know you didn't call upon me, but may I address the amendments section?
Yes, we can hear you, Chairman. So.
Okay.
Chairman So or Delegate Slater, are you still on the line?
Thank you. My line keeps getting muted. Basically, the next steps. Miss Beverly Martinez, are you on the call? Okay. Yes.
Hello. I was muted. I couldn't get through. I'm sorry. Something's wrong. I was muted.
Okay. As far as this work session, we still have further amendments, and there's some other subsections that need further discussion. We are finished with the document, and what are we? And I'm trying to find the work session agenda, and what I'm, I guess, asking is, do we just adjourn now?
Mr. Chair, this is a work session. You can adjourn, or if the committee wishes to continue, that would be up to the chairman and committee members. As far as scheduling another work session, we can put that on the next agenda for the committee members to vote on. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Office of Legal Counsel Legislative Counsel will have to review the document first before the next meeting, so we could finalize the committee report back to NABI, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and Miss Melinda Sioko will transmit those questions to Office of Legislative Counsel regarding the items that we flagged. Okay. Ms. Carletta Benali, you said you wanted to speak to the committee?
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I'm experiencing some technical difficulties here. The amendments, the section where it says with the consultation of the advisory committee of the former Miss Navajo Nation title holders, I would like for that just to be stricken and just end it at the office of Miss Navajo Nation. Just end it there, because I think it's this office's duties and responsibility to change the plan of operation as it sees fit, and I think that's important. The other thing is, Chairman, so I have a question. It's regarding the plan of operation that the amendment that I had submitted yesterday at 4:33. Are we able to discuss the proposed legislation, the changes that I have made? Will there be an opportunity to discuss that?
And again, at the opening of the work session, Miss Melinda Sioko basically reminded the committee that we were supposed to consult with the former Miss Navajo. And in doing so, we asked for the recommended changes to legislation. And we've accomplished that. the direction we got from the Nabi didn't say consult with the office of Miss Navajo. So, and that was clarified as Miss Sioko communicated with the speaker as we started the work session. So based on that, that's how I'm approaching it as the chair, and the committee approaches that in the same manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, committee.
Mr. Chair, this is Angie Bonines. May I make a comment?
Miss Angela Barney-Nez, go ahead.
Where the former title holders express inclusion, where there is notations of being consulted, those are open, you know. We wish that the office of Miss Navajo would find that beneficial. And we don't, you know, don't have to pay us anything. You could help us. I think if the office forwarded these amendments with the support of the former title holders, and, you know, a whole congruency effort could have been put forward to make sure that everything is legitimate in terms of their office and their actions. And it is not a thing for us as former title holders to be commanding what the office is doing, what the director is doing, but we would really like to see an enriched and an enhanced program for Miss Navajo. That's the eye or the way that we view our recommendations, and we really do appreciate the wisdom of the NABI committee to send it to the HESIS committee, because the HESIS committee is the one about education and the one that has the foresight about, you know, such roles as ambassadors to the Diné language and culture. And it just, you know, we're open to what we said, and we're leaving it with you, what we recommended on January 18. What you see in the bold and the underlines that we recommended was sent in on January 18. And we didn't change anything. We stuck with what our consultative processes came forth with. And, you know, we just hope for a whole good, positive working relationship from the office for Ms. Navajo and the results that are to be achieved. And we really did talk about the underlining problems in terms of loss of language and culture, loss of congruency with certain kinds of behaviors and actions that are needed to be voiced out to the people in our communities. So I would just say we really appreciate the wisdom of the committee to involve us. And anything that you want us to be, if you want us to be an advisory committee of former Miss Navajo title holders, if you want us to be a task force, if we want, you know, ad hoc committee, we have members that we send forth to anyone that wants our help. And everyone is open, all the title holders are open to that. And I would just like to end with a memorial. We lost Miss Navajo over this past couple of months. And her name was Sally Zaw Joe, our former President Peterson Zaw's sister. And a lot of contributions that she put forth for the people is so commendable. I mean, we just hold each other like that. And I hope that when you see us and look at us as former Miss Navajo title holders, we're not trying to overtake the office, and we're not trying to put anybody down, belittle anybody. We're just, really want to see the ambassadorship for Navajo Nation be flourishing, to be vibrant for the young people and the elderly as well. So thank you, Chairman So. Those would be, our concluding statements, and that anything that you want us to come forth and answer. I'm not the only one. There's a whole list of former title holders that's on these documents. I'm just here because I'm retired and everybody else is busy with being mom and grandma and so on, and I'm here, able to help. And that's how we did this. And I really appreciate everyone, Marla, Billy, and so many of those, Dr. Chief, just language teachers over and over and over, just contributing the best that they can to help the people be healthy and wealthy in their culture. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll be listening out and looking forward to anything that you might want our help in. And same thing with the office. Now we'd like to express our thanks also to the Speaker's office for bringing this such an important document to the table. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you don't. I see. I'll just convey back to the rest of the group that participated. I think, Nature Hatahasti to Sato. You see bananas, the Yosemite, the Miss Navajo, Banacha A. Saul Kacho Shatan Shidini. The Nebazad Igi Benatishkin Judanota in Nature Hatahasti. Hey, John. I see. I guess the main thing is having become a Miss Navajo, that helped them to choose to be of being a continuing servant, to be of continuing service to the Navajo Nation people, not to the government, to the people, in maintaining the language and the culture. And certainly, individually and as a group, it's just amazing. And thank you to all the Miss Navajos, all the way from Miss Vivian Arviso to Miss Shandine Parrish. with that, committee members, I think we will go into adjournment. It's a work session, and the work session is this particular segment of our work assignment is concluded. We have continuing work. Look at amending language to the proposed plan of operation, to the proposed report back to the Navajo Committee of the Navajo Nation Council. Taylor? Committee members, anybody, any one of the members want to make a concluding statement?
Chair, Delegate, this is Delegate Charlton.
Oh, was that Honorable Charlene So first?
Oh, I can't nominate. I don't know. Miss Barney Nez. I don't know. I really do appreciate this discussion. You know, I really have a lot of, you know, royalties within my district too. I can say that there's a lot of pride that they take into to their presence, to their culture. And with this, I really do appreciate also the extension of cooperation and collaboration from Ms. Barney Nez. You know, this is one that it's not going to be resolved in a few days, but this is a discussion that needs to happen. But no, that's the path that I would like us to continue, so that we can pretty much get this solidified within harmony, within Navajo perspective, within our language and culture. And this does set a very high precedence for our young women. We have, I have a niece now, and I can say that, you know, she's always asked me, why didn't you try it? And, you know, during this discussion, and and I'm just going to kind of elaborate, like, just on some personal stories, but if I'm butchering at home, my niece would be like, you would have been a good Miss Navajo Nation. And I just, you know, like to chuckle. And then that's where that persuasion and that, just that encouragement for them to, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. So there's a lot that we are putting at stake for the future. And I just want to make sure that everything falls into place. You know, my mom likes to use the term nidilino, and then that's how I like to consider this as a holy matter. And in some cases, I will take it to that extent, because our language, she looks up to that. And it's with great pride too. You know, if you see within the magazine or in an article or in social media, you see our royalties there with state officials up in Washington. They are the true ambassadors and the visual presence of who we are. And that shares that example to them. Like, these are the people that are hanging on to their culture. They're fighting, and they're hanging on to it. And I really hope, you know, we've had a lot of younger audiences to listen on this. And I also get these comments via Messenger on Facebook. And, you know, whatever they press forward to me, I also like to share it within my statements as a HESI member. So, and I really do appreciate the perspective Honorable Slater had pressed forward, and as well as with the guidance with our legislative assistant, Ms. Yako. So, thank you.
Had lunch, a busy. Um, thank you for bringing your perspective. Um, Honorable Chair Eugenia Charles Newton, you have the floor.
Yeah, Chair Stowe, thank you. One, thank you very much for allowing me to speak during your committee meeting. I know that this work session, we were all invited to attend, but I also know that that sometimes there's statements about whether other committee members should be allowed to ask questions. And so I really appreciate your courtesy and recognizing me to ask questions and also be a part of this work session. So I just want to say, Honorable Vice Chair Carl Slater, thank you both very much for allowing me to take part in this conversation. Ado Shamado, Angela Barney Nez, thank you for your insight, and Ms. Marla Billy as well. It was so nice to have a conversation with you and, you know, to get some insight into Miss Navajo. I will say that, you know, I've never thought about running. I was never, you know, identified as somebody who should run. I've always looked up to you women as, you know, just kind of like you guys were the movie stars of the Navajo Nation, just all that glamour that you brought and the knowledge that you had, and in the way that you would come into our communities and share what you know about your culture, about our tradition, our language, our songs, you know, all of that. Shay, prior to the pandemic, every weekend, almost every weekend, prior to becoming a delegate, I was, you know, at some traditional ceremony, or I was attending Native American church ceremonies. And I always say, you know, I can sing in Navajo. I know those, you know, some traditional songs, but for the life of me, I cannot. I have a very difficult time speaking it. And so, you know, I remember having Miss Navajo come to one of our school assemblies when I was in elementary school, and just seeing just the beauty and the grace of Miss Navajo. And so I've always carried that with me, and I've always felt that, you know, there's a certain type of woman who, you know, who gets called upon to carry on those types of virtues. And so I just want to say, thank you for all the Miss Navajos who are currently listening in on the line. Thank you for making this young girl believe that she can be anything and she can do anything. And I just want to say, you know, the teachings that you have, the foundation that was laid at your home, the way that you carry yourself as a woman, the respect that you have for yourself, your clan, where you come from, who you are. I think that really is, it does embody the Miss Navajo, but it also embodies the way that us young Navajo women were taught. That's what my mom, you know, always used to say, is that I'm Bitahni, and there's a long line of Bitahni women, my mom, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, who carried themselves a certain way, who had that respect for themselves a certain way. And I like to think that, you know, I do carry that with me because of who I am as a Bitahni woman. And so I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the insight that you brought today. And more importantly, the way that you're continuing to teach in your capacity with this meeting today. So I look forward to more discussions. And if you ever need to reach out, you know how to get a hold of me. I'm very active on social media. But I do want to just say I do appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. And then more importantly, HESI members, thank you very much for allowing me to take part in this work session. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Charles Newton. In that regard, I guess I better let Miss Melinda Sioko have the floor also. or else, or else. We'll leave it at that. Ms. Sioko, go ahead.
Chairman?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment. Thank you, Shania, Vice Chair and the C committee. Really appreciate being able to assist the Office of the Speaker. Definitely appreciates collaboration and moving forward. I just wanted to mention really quickly that the Speaker's Office is very thankful for all of the former Miss Navajos who have been on this journey with us now for a few months, even before that. In terms of the legislation, processing, providing comments, recommendations, being on the calls, being on work sessions, being on the public forum. I think throughout the entire process, they have definitely been able to contribute a great deal of knowledge base from their experience, as well as their perspectives in incorporating the legislation and the process. So I just wanted to mention that. And I also wanted to give thanks to Delegate Eugenia Charles Newton for providing that contact, because if it wasn't for being able to reach out to Ms. Billy, I don't believe we would have been this successful in the outpour of support and information, as well as the partnership that we would hope in moving forward as well, even as a side note for that. So thank you, in Chicago, and it took a great team effort of everyone putting everything together, and especially for the HESI committee to come back as well and provide the comments and input. And I just wanted to give a reminder that this legislation is due back at the Navajo committee. I believe it was from the 90 days of when it was referred. So I'm not positive on exactly what date that falls on. So I just wanted to mention that and say thanks again, and have a great rest of the evening. And finally, I did send over the draft document for your review, revisions, edits, and changes to the HESI committee, as well as those that were on the call today. And I also did include the Office of Legislative Counsel, Chief Counsel Dana Barbara. Thank you, Chairman. So.
Thank you, Shadeja, Ms. Sioko. Committee members, anybody else? Otherwise, this work session is adjourned. Thank you again, everybody. Work session is over at 6:01. Good
night.